Hi, this is Marlene.gibb with What Do You Do? And today's guest is Piper Bruce. And Piper, what do you do?
I have a dog rescue called Hand and Paw, and we rescue homeless, abandoned, and neglected dogs from the shelters or as strays.
Okay.
And we fix them up and get them all the treatment they need, and then we find them really loving homes for the rest of their lives.
Okay, so let's talk about the dog.
This is Jasper.
Talk about Jasper, and then we'll get into your story.
Jasper came to us from San Bernardino Shelter, which is a very high kill shelter. And we do most of our networking on Facebook, and we see these dogs that volunteers go into the shelter and take pictures of, and we see how much time they have left in the shelter before they're euthanized. San Bernardino often gives their dogs 1 day to get adopted before they are euthanized. So, we really have to rush in there quickly. Jasper was there, and he was extremely matted. His hair was down to the floor. He didn't look anything like this. He was very sick, and we got him out, immediately took him to the groomer, but we realized that he just wasn't right. He wasn't breathing well, and we knew we had to take him to the vet right away. So we took him to the vet, and it turns out that he had really bad pneumonia. So the doctor at the emergency vet said that he probably wouldn't live, which was just horrifying because, you get these dogs out and you just want them to start over and you want to give them everything. And it was a lot to hear. So that night we took him home, and we first had him pumped up full of fluid so that he was at least hydrated, because he wasn't eating or drinking, wasn't breathing well. I mean, he was barely alive. Got him through the night, laid on the bathroom floor with him all night, and had a humidifier going. And then the next day, put him in the hospital, where he was there getting fluids all day, every day for about 2 weeks. And when I got him home, he didn't seem much better. I had a few days with him at home, and I took him back and got his x-rays redone, and we saw that the pneumonia had doubled. And we really were at a loss. We were told that we'd have to take him into another facility where they had a nebulizer, which would basically pump medication through the air, and hopefully that would have him respond. But that was $70 an hour, and they wanted to do it for 3 days, and that was too much. Couldn't handle that. So we decided to change his course of treatment and just prayed that it would work. And we started that, and the next morning, I had him in a separate room. The next morning I opened the door, and he was jumping up and down. And
what'd you do?
I don't know. I think it was a miracle. His lungs were just instantly clear, and I don't know. I don't think medication can work that quickly. But I mean, I just cried all night and prayed that something would work, and it did. Now he's just,
he's yours.
So loving, and after all that, we bonded so much together over those weeks that he was being treated, and yeah, I couldn't give him up after that.
Let's start back at the beginning. You have volunteers that go out to all the shelters daily?
We do not have the volunteers. They are just volunteers that, we all have our different roles in rescue. Some people go to the shelters and take photos of each dog and then post them on Facebook with their intake date and how much time they have left. So then, as a rescuer, my partner and I, we are tagged on these posts, and they say, Hand and Paw, can you help this dog? And we take a look at the room we have and the number of dogs there are out there. We choose the ones that we can, and then we go down there and take them out.
And what happens to the rest of the dogs there?
Hopefully another rescue picks them up. And we network almost every dog. It's just that we can only take a certain number.
Right, so if one can't take it, somebody else can take it.
Right.
And you do mostly small dogs?
Mostly, yeah.
So they get the rescue, you've got the vets all lined up, right? The groomers lined up,
Yes.
So you just know where to go with, you don't have to think about any of
Right.
this. And then what happens next after you got the vet and the groomer? What's the next step in the process?
Yeah, the dogs are immediately taken to the groomer and the vet because they typically are so matted and filthy. And then, yes, of course, they are immediately taken to the vet as well to make sure that, they come out of the shelter sick almost every time. So
aren't they supposed to, when they have these dogs, don't you have to pay for some of these services?
Oh, yeah.
Don't you have to pay like $50, $60 to, because they say they have this shot or that shot?
We have contracts with various shelters, which means that we get the dog out for free.
Okay.
And that typically does not include any vaccinations. They're not neutered, they're not spayed. We like to do that on our own.
Okay.
Because our facilities are cleaner, and these shelters, they want to save money and they use a lot of the same equipment, or I don't know, we just don't trust it. There's so many sick dogs in the shelters that we like to use our own doctor so that we know. And we like to wait until they're out of the shelter a little bit so that their immune system can get stronger. Because once their immune system is compromised in the shelter and they're already sick, and then they get spayed or neutered, they get even sicker. To answer your question, after they are vetted and groomed, then they go into a foster home. We never board our dogs. They're never kenneled, so that they can exit the shelter system and immediately start living a home life and get socialization with other dogs and people. They learn basic training.
Now these volunteers, they're from the community? I mean,
Just people that
like
want
dogs?
to help in some way. If they can't foster, if they can't be a rescue, then they go in there and network the dogs that way.
Obviously, they've had a lot of dogs, haven't they? So as a volunteer to do this, you have to know a lot about dogs, or could it be anybody?
It could be anybody.
Really? I mean, it could, just somebody who
As a foster, you mean?
Yeah, as a foster.
Oh, it can be anybody. We do have an application, and we screen each foster, and we do a home check.
So what are you looking for, like in a foster parent for a dog?
We make sure that it's a good match. We make sure that the dog's good with kids. If they have kids, we make sure their yard is enclosed, that they can give enough time to the dog. We supply them with all the food they need, beds, toys. We give them everything they need, but we just make sure that it's a secure home.
What happens with dogs when both people work? Can they still be a volunteer if both adults work?
Yes, we like for them to have more interaction. I mean, it depends on how long they're gone, and are they keeping the dog in a kennel, or is the dog out in the yard? Is the dog with other dogs? If they have a playmate, then it's okay.
So it's better that you have two dogs better than one dog because they socialize better.
If
they get
it
along.
depends, yeah.
You have to make sure that the two dogs will get along.
Yeah, always.
Yeah. So do you have a period of time where this happens?
We do a meet and greet on neutral ground to make sure that everyone gets along, and then we slowly introduce them into the house and make sure. We've never had an issue.
Oh, well, yeah, but sometimes, I have a cat, and some cats don't get along with other cats.
Oh, absolutely. Cats are different.
Yeah, they just don't. That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So, okay, so what's the next? So go through the whole process.
So then they're in a foster home, and they are put on our website with their little personality traits and age and all that stuff. And they're promoted on Facebook and our rescue site. And then they're also taken to adoption events, whether it's Petco or just somewhere in the community. And then we introduce them to everybody when they're ready. Some dogs are super resilient and they're ready right away, but some need some time to decompress, and depending on their past. And
well, how long do they stay in a foster home?
it could be a day.
That's it?
Sometimes we post a dog, and for some reason everybody comes rushing and wants that dog. Sometimes it takes 5-6 months, just waiting for the right person to come along. We'll get applications, but we just don't think it's the right fit, and that dog won't go home. We really want our dogs to have the perfect home. We will wait for that.
What happens if you take the dog and they realize in a couple of days, then they bring the dog back to you?
Yeah, that's part of our contract. If the dog does not work out, we absolutely demand that they bring the dog back to us. We're happy to have it back. sometimes, we often get adopters out of state or people out of state that want to adopt, and we do not allow that. And that is because it's much harder to keep track of a dog when it's across state lines. And if they didn't want the dog, they could easily take the dog to a shelter there or dump it, and we would never know. But it's much easier to keep track here.
How long do you keep track after the dog has been adopted?
Forever.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, not like I'm checking up on them every day, but we like getting updates, and we get updates all the time. We get, voluntary. I don't even contact them, but they contact us. And they just say, so-and-so is doing really great, and we're so happy, and I get photos. And
You have over 100 dogs now that
Yeah.
have been, and
it's a lot.
Yeah, I think it's phenomenal. I mean, 'cause you've taken a business model, and it's grown very quickly.
It has.
I mean, in comparison to a business starting off. But I think when you deal with animals, it's very emotional for people.
We do mostly everything on Facebook. So a lot of the social networking is very instrumental in getting us quick exposure. But we follow the dog from the moment it's in the shelter. We post photos along the transformation, and we write these great stories that people really want to be involved. So I think that helps.
I think so. Let's start with your background. Okay, you went to school. You were in behavioral sciences, right?
I went to USC and I studied psychology.
Mm-hmm.
I really wanted to be an autism therapist. I have a brother with autism, so that was my passion at the time. So I focused on child psychology at USC. And then when I left there, I became a behavioral therapist for children with autism and adults as well, but mostly children. And I got my master's in applied behavior analysis. And I really enjoyed it, but at the same time, I take care of my brother so much that it was nonstop. I got burned out pretty much.
I can understand that.
Working with clients 9 hours a day and then going home to him and working with him. So I started to think about changing the psychology focus to criminal psychology. And I was going to get my PhD in forensic psychology. But I thought that maybe I would learn more if I entered the police force. So I started applying, and I immediately started academy and got hired on. And I was a police officer for about 2 years. And I concurrently finished my master's in criminal justice. But things didn't go so well with the police department after a few years, and I left. And not the best circumstances. And during that time, I found that cooking was very therapeutic for me. I cook for my family, I cook for friends and neighbors, and they said, "Piper, you're so good at this, you should do this, you should have a catering business." So I said, okay. I sent myself to culinary school and started my own catering business, and that's what I did for about 6 years. All the while, all my life, I've been rescuing dogs and always bringing home strays to my parents, and I don't know, I felt like I needed to be doing more than just cooking. And
the cooking was the passion there as much? It was kind of, but not?
It was there, but working in animal rescue, I got much more involved with the animal rights aspect of it, and being a chef and cooking meat all day. I got a little bit turned off. So I became a vegan, and there aren't too many people that want a vegan chef. So I left that and started doing this full time in April of 2013.
When you were doing the cooking and you became vegan, mm-hmm. were you aware, I'm sure you were, that you didn't want killing of any animal, right? That's really started to get to you.
Right.
Were you aware of it when you were younger?
Yes, I was actually a vegetarian for about 7 years when I was younger. I don't even know why I stopped, but I did. think it was just the importance of it, I guess, faded away to me when I went to college. And
Yeah, and then
I battled with it back and forth, but eventually with rescue and everything that I see, I had to stop. And so I actually waited until my last chef job finished, and then I made the switch.
Okay, so when you came back and you decided, okay, I'm going to start a rescue business, did you have any idea what you were doing? No.
Actually, how it happened was an acquaintance of mine shared a status of this organization called Pet Pardons, and they basically promote pet pardons.
Pet pardons, okay.
And they promote dogs on death row all over the country. Death row, and everyone's on death row really, but I saw this one dog, and I saw the thousands of comments this dog was getting, and it was in Orange County, this dog, and no one was taking any action. And I just, this dog's gonna die at 4 p.m. today. It's 2 p.m. Still the dog is there. And so I drove down there and I got the dog, and that's what started it all. I had no idea that Facebook had this giant network of trying to save these dogs, and that's where it started. And from there, I started doing it on my own, actually. I didn't have an organization. I went out, I got the dog, I fixed it up, and I got a home for it.
Now, how did you do that? I mean, this was like you get one dog and then you take it to the vet.
Yeah, it started with one.
One dog, right? And then word spread fast. Did you post this on Facebook?
Yes.
Okay.
Clearly could not take donations or anything like that. One of them needed amputation of his leg, and Pet Pardons, they're a really great organization. They posted that this dog needed donations for its leg surgery, and I think in less than 48 hours I had all the money needed, and it was just like this incredible, complete strangers giving all this money, and it was great. And I actually kept that dog too, and he still has he has 3 legs, and he's great. But then from there, it just more and more dogs came through, and I was finding them homes really quickly. And then I met my rescue partner, Alexis. She lives up in Las Vegas, and she said, let's do a rescue together. And I said, okay, let's do it. Then we just went from there.
So you're a 501c3?
Yes.
Because you have a business. This is a real business.
It is.
And all right, I knew that, but I wanted the audience to know that you have a real business with a 501c3. It's a lot of work establishing this business. You're trying to do the business, and then you're going to be a corporation with all the laws.
Well, I got really lucky. Alexis's husband has a law firm, so all that really long paperwork got done by them. They have a notary public on site and everything, so I got really lucky because before I started with her, I tried to do it on my own through LegalZoom, because they actually have a pretty good tools to start. It still costs a lot of money, but
they do.
Yeah, so everything was taken care of, and I got very lucky.
When someone gets a dog, they have to pay for the dog, right? Because it includes...
All the dogs are neutered, vaccinated, microchipped, dewormed, they get flea treatment, and if they need any surgery, no matter what the cost is, we take care of it. We make sure that once they go to a home, they have everything done. If they have a behavioral issue, they get training. They need teeth cleaning, whatever it is, we make sure that the dog goes to their home in perfect shape.
When they have behavioral, they're like children, right? When they have behavioral, are there behavioral animal people that work with?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So what? Give me a behavioral.
Well, we had one dog. He was a black lab, and when we took him out of the shelter, he had a broken leg and an injury where all the skin on his leg had come off, which indicated to us that it almost looked like he was dragged by a car from a car, because all the skin was just completely off. It was exposing the bone. It was awful. But when we took him to his foster home, and we figured labs have such a good personality, we introduced him to the other dog, and he went for the other dog, and we thought, oh my gosh, this is a mess. So we immediately called the trainer, and we just had her work with him, using her own dogs that were so perfectly trained that she would have them lay down and she would have the other dog come up and sniff them. I mean, she slowly introduced them. We don't know what dogs, you know, if he'd gotten in fights or what it was, that he was so scared. It wasn't aggression, it was that he was very insecure. So we slowly socialized him, and now he's fantastic. He's adopted and he's great with all dogs. But we took the time to not only treat that injury, which took months to treat,
Right.
but we had training regularly with him.
So the vets, because you are a business, the vets that you pay,
Do they cut us a break?
yeah, do
Yes.
they cut you a break? I mean, that they would have to. I mean,
Yeah,
because you're doing so much,
Yeah.
and you and your husband are young, and you know, I mean, that gets to be very expensive because
is.
veterinarians are, you know, just charge as much as doctors.
Yeah, well, I mean, fortunately, as a 501c3, we have fundraisers. And when we do get a case that requires a very expensive surgery, we had one 2 weeks ago that had a hernia that required a $2,000 surgery.
Wow.
And we post these fundraisers online. Luckily, we have a lot of followers on Facebook and a lot of support, and we were able to raise that money. But, you know, yes, I don't personally get paid, and I put a lot of time, and it's, you know, money. Time is money,
Right.
but I don't make a salary, and therefore we do rely on our donations, and that's what takes care of everything.
But you're doing what you like.
Oh,
I mean, you
yeah.
found a way to do what you like.
Yeah,
And also have the animals that you want.
I'm more fulfilled now than I was doing any other job that paid very well. So yeah, I couldn't be happier. But yes, our vet does cut us a break.
Yeah.
He's great.
Now, where do you want to take the business? Because you've gotten into other aspects of animals' rights, right? I mean, now that you've got this established,
Yeah.
and other people go out. If you can't get the animal, like down in Orange County, and you decide you want that animal, can you send somebody from Orange County who's close to that
Sure.
kennel? Or that,
Sure, but
and
we typically end up
running-
able to go down there. We go all the way from Orange County, or even actually way further, Moreno Valley, San Bernardino, Apple Valley, Bakersfield, California City up in Mojave. Yeah, we go everywhere.
God, that's a long.
I do a lot of driving, but
How, with the dogs and the animal rights, where do you see it going?
I think we want people to be aware of, it's just so important. There's so many dogs that, I mean, 14 million or 15 million a year are put down in the shelters. It's crazy, and we just want people to know that these dogs are fantastic, and there's no need to go anywhere else for them. You know, in terms of diet and stuff, it's hard to promote that and not get people turned off sometimes. I mean, you can't really shove that down people's throats. Some people
No.
are not open to it, you know.
Well, I do want to talk about it, even if people aren't open to it. I think there's an awareness. I mean, when you told me the other day when we were talking, now I asked an innocent question, never thinking. I thought most dogs would be once.
Cremated?
Yeah, that's what I thought.
No, these dogs' bodies are utilized. Basically, the shelter makes a profit off of the carcasses that they dispose of. They go to rendering plants, and
The rendering plants are what?
well, they basically, the dogs get put into these big barrels, and the bodies basically get boiled, and the fats separate from the proteins, and they find different uses for those parts. A lot of times includes dog food or lotions and soaps and, you know, whatever they can get out of the products. It's really sickening.
And they pay $50 a head.
Yes.
And that money goes back to the shelters. And some of the shelters are really not taking care of the animals, right?
Definitely not.
I think the average person, thinks that shelters, well, they're good shelters and bad shelters, but you know that there's a safe place, and they're really going to try to help the dogs.
Absolutely. No.
I mean, I think this is I don't know, is that and that's my naivete, but
No, most people think that way. And I thought that way before I really started getting into this. Those shelters are hell. They don't even have a bed to sleep on. They have cement, and they're typically outdoors, so if it's really hot, they're really hot, and if it's freezing, they're freezing. It's awful. They're fed horrible food. They get sick all the time. There's outbreaks of distemper and parvo, and those dogs have to be
what's parvo?
Parvo, it's a virus that affects their, I guess their gastrointestinal tract, but they really need to just be put down right away if they're in the shelter, because the shelter's not going to treat them with all the fluids that they need. But it's a really horrible disease. They get lethargic, they don't eat, they get bloody diarrhea, and just it ends very quickly for them if they don't get treated right away. So, and parvo spreads very quickly. So once one dog shows a single sign, whatever, vomiting, whatever it is, they're put down right away, and then they have to then quarantine every dog that's been around them in any way, and then, they get put down too for being exposed. So, and that's why it's important as a rescue to know these things, because these dogs are in isolation, and they can be treated if they, get out quickly. But
how many rescue, compared to shelters, how many shelters are there in Southern California?
Well, there's city shelters, county shelters. So I think LA City, I think they have 4 or 5. West Valley, East Valley, North, and South, and maybe 4. And then the county shelters, Downey, Carson, Baldwin Park, Lancaster.
Is one better than the other?
They're all awful.
So if a person has, I was up in Twin Peaks, the Arrowhead area, and someone was telling me that people take their animals up there and just leave them.
Yeah, that happens all the time.
But they die up there. I mean,
yeah. Same with Mojave Desert. We've had a few that were dumped in the desert and eventually picked up by the shelter there, but roaming the desert for months. People just, I don't know what they're thinking, but it's awful. We see every time I'm at the shelter, it's so hard because there's a line of people surrendering their dogs. And, you see the fear in their eyes, and they're shaking, and they hear the sounds, they smell the death, they know.
They know.
And it's terrible.
And why are they giving up their dogs?
I don't have time for it, I'm allergic, I just don't feel like having a dog. My dog's too old, I want a puppy. They'll surrender their 13-year-old dog and they'll walk right into the puppy ward and go adopt a puppy, and it's cruel. My dog's sick, I don't want to take care of it.
Yeah, but that dog's been with you their whole life.
I know, I don't know what these people are thinking. So a lot of times when I'm at the shelter, I end up not just taking that one, but then, hearing these people surrender their dogs, I end up taking those too, because it's just too much.
Yeah.
Too much to hear. Or I keep a note on those dogs, and we end up taking them out because we see the whole process.
What's the message? I mean, what'd you say, 14 or 15 million dogs are in shelters?
Yeah. No, killed every year.
Killed, okay. And how many, well, it's the turnaround is very quick, isn't it? I mean, like, San Bernardino's one day?
Sometimes, yeah. A lot of times. And then you get hoarding cases where 140 dogs are recovered from a home. Those dogs have to go to the shelter. What happens to the dogs in the shelter? They have to kill them for space to take in these new dogs. A lot of times, when these people bring in kittens, they kill them on intake. They don't even give them a chance. They don't have room. They don't have money, and they don't have room, especially San Bernardino. It's
a poor county.
It's bankrupt.
Right. What is your message to get out? I have one cat. I have an only child cat.
Adopt more.
Adopt more.
No, spaying and neutering is so important. And you'd be surprised how many we find, and we end up finding the owner for whatever reason, whether they're microchipped or posting online. And I say, you know, I'll get your dog neutered before I give him back. I'll pay for it. And they'll say, no, 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 I want to have puppies someday. My dog's beautiful. I want to have puppies. And I'm like, are you kidding? There's so many. There's so many dogs. Why would you want to do that? But, you know, I can't legally, it's their dog, so I can't do it.
Right,
but
right.
It's, some people just don't understand. And I don't really think they care, depending on where you are. But people just kick their dogs out of their house and hope they run away. They don't care. They don't see them as family members. They just see them as a nuisance. Maybe the kids want the dog and the parents don't.
Yeah, but those are, to me, those are big decisions. I mean, that's, you know, I mean, they are a family member, so you've got to think about this in the, you know, the long term.
And that's why we screen our adopters so well. You know, our application asks all those kinds of questions. Why would you surrender your dog? If we see anything, we're not adopting out. And that's another reason why we take care of any medical need that they require, because so many are surrendered due to medical issues. You know, so we make sure there's no excuses.
Okay, so if someone, let's say, that we're talking about medical issues, let's say you have a family who really loves the dog, and they need, the dog is really sick, and the family can't afford the surgery or whatever. Could they work with someone like you or not? I mean, I just, you know, because that's a big decision if you have a family and then you hear the cost is for a surgery is $4,000 or $5,000. I just thought I'd throw that one out to you.
Don't come running to me, but we could always try to help. I mean, we can't just give them the money, obviously, but we could help them fundraise.
Right. Okay, but I mean, if it's, I know when I belong to the gym, and there was a picture of a dog, and Brian had it up. The dog needed surgery, and there was a box, and everybody was, and they found out that I think it was $2,000, but they raised the $2,000 at the gym.
That's a good way to do it. And there's also care credit available for dogs, so it's a credit card for medical care for dogs, and you have, like, I don't know if it's a year or 2 years that you can make payments. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that helps a lot of families.
Because I don't think a lot of families know these things.
Yeah.
Because they hear the bill, the dog's going to go in, and then they know they can't afford it. So, I mean, I think it would be nice to know that there are alternative things that they can do to work with the family and the dog.
There's also a nonprofit vet out in Los Angeles on Slauson called Pet Care Center, and they'll do some pretty big surgeries for really cheap. Really?
So they're very committed to the animals.
So when people call me, I usually say, if we can't help, then that's a good place to go.
So where do you want to take this now? I mean, do you have any idea?
I would love to one day have enough funding to open like an education center where we have, our hand and paw dogs that you can adopt there and teach the public about responsibility in the shelters and how important it is to adopt, to neuter, how to be a good pet owner. I just want to educate people.
So do you think you can do that through like some of the pet stores or?
Yeah, I mean, we're starting with Petco, and they're really great. But eventually we'd like to have like our own building, our own business.
Really?
Where people can go and maybe even have a little vegan food there.
This, I have to ask you, aren't dogs and cats meat eaters?
Yes, I don't mean vegan food for them. I mean vegan food for people.
Oh, okay, because, my cat likes meat. I mean.
Oh, absolutely. No, they're carnivores.
Yeah. So how do people buy products? And if they're being killed, for different parts, right? How do you know? I don't know how to say this, but they're meat eaters. So what kind of meat do they eat, dogs and cats? I mean, I know my cat likes fish.
Lamb and beef and chicken and salmon.
Where do you get the food for the pets?
Petco.
Okay.
There's, you have to be careful. I always tell people anything you can buy from a supermarket is horrible for your dog. No matter
Okay.
what those commercials say, you know, Purina, IAMS, all those are really bad for your dog. They use poor quality, and the parts they use aren't good. So there's some really good brands out there that I really highly recommend.
Personally, I think you should do what you want to do and ask people to donate for you to buy
Yeah.
a building so you can do what you want to do.
Yeah,
Because no one else is doing this, right?
not that I know.
So you would have a whole curriculum of how to select a pet, what to do with pets,
Yeah.
blah blah
Field
blah.
trips, teach the kids young.
I think that's a fantastic idea. And you're into your second year now, your first year.
Just starting the second year.
Yeah, well, I think that's a very good vision, personally.
Thanks.
and I think it's an important vision.
I think so too.
So I would like to see that.
Okay.
I don't know why.
Let's
but
make it happen.
I think pets are such important parts of people's lives. We had this conversation this morning, but in most countries, pets aren't treated the same way.
Oh, I know. I mean,
I
think it's bad here, but then once I start looking at other countries, like I actually rescued a dog from Taiwan, but
How did you get a dog from Taiwan?
I was volunteering for a different shelter. We had an associate over in Taiwan that brought back 3 dogs from there.
Yeah. Do they get through customs and?
Yeah,
with
they
the
have
dogs?
a long quarantine period and whatnot. But
Okay.
you know, there's the meat trade, the dog meat trade there. They kill like I think 2.5 million dogs for meat in Taiwan, and it's horrible. But you know, third world countries, the way they treat dogs, it's even more horrific than here.
Yeah,
Much
that's
more.
Foothill Unity Center. I do want to say this has a group of people who raise money so the animals can stay with the people. 'Cause they feel strongly about that, and they take it for dogs and cats. And they give food. The cats and dogs are being supplied food too, so people can donate food to or money to the Foothill Unity Center for the animals. I don't know.
great.
I don't think other groups are doing that.
I do know that South LA shelter has an intervention program where if a family comes in and says they can't afford to spay or neuter their pet because you know it's required for the license and all that, I think LA will do it for you. They just got a big grant, so I mean, some shelters are trying to help people that can't afford certain care, and you know, it's not so much food donations, but medical stuff,
Yeah.
so that they're not surrendered and entered into the shelter system.
And you're almost like a clearinghouse for. I mean, you know so much. You're almost like a clearinghouse for this information. So can people email you or
Sure.
call you, or how do you like it?
Call me anytime.
Anytime? Okay.
Yeah.
I want you to look at the camera and say your name and your web address, and I guess since you're big on Facebook, your Facebook address.
Sure. My name is Piper Bruce. I'm with Hand and Paw Rescue. Our website is www.handinpawrescue.com, and our Facebook site is www.facebook.com/handpawrescue.
Thank you, Piper.
Thank you, Marlene.
This is Marlene Gibb with What Do You Do?